All right, welcome back, everyone. This is Beneath the Helmet. This is actually season 4, episode 101. Today, I got a retired lieutenant fire officer and also the owner of Fire Rescue Wellness. Please welcome Annette Zapp to the air today. AZ.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
Thank you so much
So,
for having me. Thank you.
fantastic.
It's a pleasure. Long time in the coming.
It is, yes. And we're definitely in the same kind of space, the same mission is supporting firefighter health, wellness, physical, spiritual, mental, and we're definitely in the same space there. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. So AZ, tell us a little bit about who you are and kind of what brought you to what you're doing today in this world.
I think the coolest thing about what I do is actually not the fact that I was a firefighter. Of course, we know it's the best job in the world. I would never deny that. But I feel like supporting the health and wellness of firefighters is my greatest honor. And so after retirement, I always like to say I was retired approximately 45 seconds when I decided to pursue my PhD. And so I uprooted my life from Illinois, where I had lived for 30 years, uprooted my life and moved to Oklahoma. Yes, Oklahoma, you heard me correctly. And I went all in. I bought a house. I'm staying in Oklahoma, but I started my PhD at Oklahoma State University in the fall of 2024. And people ask me, why did you do that exactly? Because as you can probably tell, I'm quite a non-traditional student. I took a 30-year gap between my master's and my PhD. So why did I want to do that? And I think the thing that is most important to me is that we don't have enough people translating the research for firefighters. And so the research is getting done. Fantastic research coming out of all kinds of labs. Dr. Mark Abel, my advisor, Jay Dawes, Rob Orr in Australia, Jacob Moda in Texas, Drew Gonzalez in Texas. And so very few people are actually translating that research for the end user. And so that's my purpose in life, translating that research for the end user.
Love it. Love it. Yes, we need that so much. And in the fire service, we're very accustomed to decision making based around facts, around stats, around numbers and figures and evidence base. So, saying that, what are some of the biggest surprises that you saw going through this that you didn't expect after 20 some odd years in the fire service?
Well, it's really interesting. When I started the fire service in 2004, I remember thinking that a lot of the things that my chief was saying to us regarding, now I'm talking about health and wellness, now I'm talking about fire tactics and strategies. And I remember thinking, that doesn't sound right. I'm very new to this whole job, but what he's saying doesn't sound scientifically correct. And as it turns out, what he was saying was not scientifically correct. And so I think my biggest surprise was the fact that a lot of the fire service was previously kind of based on dogma. We do it this way because we've always done it this way because I said so. And it is such a refreshing surprise now that things like Science to the Station, Dr. Sarah Jenke's project, Science to the Station, and I have a project with a collaborator, 7-Minute Science. It's really surprising to me that firefighters are kind of eating that up. And I think the important thing is that we have found people that are actually storytellers, because no one wants to look at charts and graphs. They want to know, what story is the data telling me? So I guess that's two surprises. The fact that fire service was not scientific, and now we're stepping into the science. Super happy about that.
Cool. So, besides storytelling, what have you found that really resonates with firefighters to start to embrace this new information and really start to understand the science behind it a little bit better, besides storytelling? Because I think it's super powerful. Is there anything else?
Yes, I really have been able to capture their interest. I know you're going to be shocked, but when we talk to males about testosterone, they're very interested. So that is one way I get the conversation started about the importance of sleep and physical fitness training and nutrition. Listen, your testosterone is tanking as you go throughout the fire service. And it's not just males, it's females too. Their hormones are tanking. And so that is definitely one way to capture their interest. And then the other thing that I find is very, very impactful for them is that the top four things that take firefighters' lives. So our top four mortality risks are really, they're all tied back to sleep. They're all tied back to nutrition. They're all tied back to physical fitness training. And to some, in some respects, or to some measure, they're also tied back to mental health and wellness. So it's all tied together.
Yes, well, I can attest, talking about storytelling, the fact of testosterone when you're going through burnout and trauma. For myself, when I was going through burnout, and which ultimately ended my career in the fire service, was my testosterone. My hormones in general were completely out of whack, and my estrogen was through the roof, and my testosterone was to the floor. And it didn't take long with some, blood work and the nice tests that they offer. I did the Dutch test, which also really
Mhm.
helped me kind of figure out what direction to go in. But I was able to recorrect it and bring it back
Mhm.
to, I wouldn't say, my 20s kind of levels, but great levels, right? Compared to how I was going through burnout. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the fact that you maybe knew to ask that question,
Mhm.
and understand that it's many times firefighters don't even understand how their health challenges might be related to the job because I think they compartmentalize things, which is great. It makes them great firefighters. Being able to compartmentalize, it kind of makes them really patient and really bad at advocating for themselves as well. So I'm glad you sort of caught on to that and embraced it.
Yeah, it was worth it. I always say I had an army of people supporting me going through burnout, and some of the people suggested hormone. I didn't even register with me before that. So luckily, I surrounded myself with people that knew a very holistic approach to burnout, and a kind of directed me in many many facets to help me. Right. So I think if I was doing it by myself, I wouldn't have known anything to do with hormones. I wouldn't have been on my horizon whatsoever. So it was nice to have that army behind me.
I had an interesting question from an academy recruit yesterday. He is almost the youngest recruit in the academy. He just turned 20. And he asked me about testosterone, like actually taking hormone replacement. And I said, um, why do you ask? Like, tell me more. And he's like, well, I've just heard that firefighters kind of need to take it. And I said, well, this is maybe a discussion for down the road. What we're hoping to do with you here in this education is maybe make that never have to be one of your challenges. So maybe go get that blood work now. You're 20, go get the blood work so that we know in 15 years or 10 years or whatever, where were you when you were feeling good and you were young and all of that stuff. So it's incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, and I honestly think a lot of firefighters don't necessarily consider that, and including myself, right? It's like, why would my hormones change due to the job, right? But
Mm,
as we know, stress and even the environment can impact it, right? So,
mhm. And then, like you said, sleep, sleep,
yes,
sleep, sleep.
yes.
A lot of it ties back to sleep.
What would be your core principles for spawners and sleep? Anything you want to share there around things you must do and not non-negotiables?
Yes, I think you need to have a plan because 90% of the firefighters, probably higher, that I talk to, I say, "What's your bedtime?" And they say, "What do you mean? Bedtime? I'm not a child." Yes, I understand you're not a child, but if you don't have a bedtime, you don't have a plan. And so the average adult needs 7 to 9 hours. And so if you're not giving yourself a 7 to 9 hour sleep opportunity, that means you need to be in bed for 7 to 9 hours. You're never going to get that amount of sleep. So simply having that plan is very important. And then part two of that is we acknowledge that we do not have a lot of control of our time while we're on duty. It's just a fact. But we have some level of control And so I'm pretty sure there aren't any departments that mandate that you stay up until 2 in the morning. Some departments, my agency had a rule left over from when we had part-timers, which was you could not occupy your bed until 10 p.m. And the reason for that rule is they didn't want the part-timers to come in at 7 o'clock and just go to bed and not do anything. And they never bothered to change the rule. So again, it was like a soft rule that no one really complied with. But I would always tell my guys, I go to bed at 8 o'clock and there's a good chance I'll get up at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever for a call. But if you're still out there playing cards at 2 in the morning and we get a box alarm, you got zero sleep. And I got 4 or 6 hours before we even went on that box alarm. And so controlling what we can control while we're on duty, like just go to bed, I think is important. And then we have to realize where we do have control, which is off duty. And so I don't know about in Canada, but in the United States, we love our side jobs. We love to do something on our days off. And unfortunately, that severely cuts into your rest and recovery time. And so, maybe not planning to work that side job on your first day off and making sure that that's dedicated to rest and recovery as much as possible. I know everyone has different situations, kids or obligations or mother-in-law that needs to go to cancer treatments. I understand, but if we can control our controllables as much as possible, we'll be doing so much better.
Think about naps for first responders. Something that works, something that doesn't work. What do you think?
My favorite topic. I love naps. And I do. And as long as I always say there's a definite value in naps unless they are actually interfering with your nighttime sleep. So, you've probably done it before. I know I have taken a nap too late in the afternoon or taken a nap too long during the day, and then you can't sleep at night. That's one of those situations where maybe the nap wasn't the best idea. But as long as you keep those naps to sort of match our sleep cycles, and so we want to make sure that we're right around in that 20 to 30-minute range where we're still in our light sleep cycle, or hopefully we can get an entire approximately hour and a half nap because then we get through an entire sleep cycle. And I actually say there is some controversy about this. Could you imagine naps are controversial? But some people really feel like 90 minutes max, no more. But I really feel like if you are really in a sleep deprivation state, maybe going an additional sleep cycle, so like an 180-minute nap is probably not harmful as long as it doesn't mess with your nighttime sleep. But those kind of just weaponizing those little short naps or a sleep cycle can be very, very powerful. And then one of my favorite tools in the arsenal, it was actually developed by the Department of Defense, research done at Walter Reed, I believe, and they call it the nappuccino. Have you heard about the nappuccino?
Yes, one of my favorites.
Isn't it so great?
Yes.
Right? You have about 60 to 80 milligrams of caffeine, and then you go have your 20 to 30-minute nap. The caffeine is kicking in, and you woke up and you're still in your light sleep cycle. You feel fantastic rather than like a truck hits you. And that's the problem. When you wake up, say around an hour or something like that, you're kind of in the middle of that deep sleep and you have this like sleep inertia that just you want to keep sleeping. And so that's when you kind of don't feel good when you wake up that portion of your sleep cycle. But I love naps. Endorse, endorse, endorse.
Love it. Love it. So are those 4 key pillars you talked about, the mental health, physical health, sleep, and there's a 4th one, which was nutrition. Nutrition. Is there a number 1 out of those 4?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I call them upstream interventions. And so fire service knows all about upstream interventions because that's fire prevention. We'll never know exactly how many lives a smoke detector saved. We'll never know exactly how many lives a panic hardware saved, but they're upstream interventions and we know they save lives. And that's why we do them. And it's the same thing with those 4 pillars of health. But when I arrange them, I always think about sleep being the most upstream of all the upstream interventions Because, well, think back to when you were a little kid and you're just being a complete holy terror. And like, what was your problem? You needed some sleep. And so when we sleep adequately, we're able to influence all the other behaviors, the more they're still upstream, but the more downstream behaviors. So when you have adequate sleep, your nutritional choices are better. Like nobody's going to have, this is my friend Megan Loutz's example. She's like, no one's having a salad in the middle of the night when they get awakened for the third time, right? They're going for the comfort foods, heavy sugars, heavy fats, high carbohydrate, because it makes you feel better. But your decision-making processes are hijacked when you don't have enough sleep. And so when you get enough sleep, you make better nutritional choices. When you have enough sleep, you have enough exercise and, dare I say, motivation. I kind of hate that word, but motivation to physically train yourself. And when you get enough sleep, it's a direct impact on your mood and your behavior. So sleep, hands down, if you can't do it all, if you can sleep, everything gets better.
Agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I consider it the foundation as well, right? So
Yeah. The bottom of the pyramid.
yeah, love it. So, some of the key areas in fitness that we've talked about over the years, functional fitness, that kind of thing. You also talk about exercise for your health, but then you also talk about exercise for training for performance. What would be the difference between those two?
They're so different. And because we screw up the definition and the meaning and the outcome of them, I think we make a lot of mistakes. And so I always revisit uh, American College of Sports Medicine guidelines, right? In the United States, we use these and we say you need to have 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardiovascular activity, or I believe it's 75 minutes of higher intensity cardiovascular activity per week for your health. And that's to decrease your mortality risk. That's to decrease your chances for disease processes, so on and so forth. And then they go further and say, and 2 resistance training sessions per week, kind of as a minimum for your health. And it's really interesting. The author's name escapes me, but it was a 2011 study. Less than 20% of firefighters meet the minimum recommended exercise parameters for health. So they're not even going for a 30-minute walk 5 days a week. They're not even doing body weight squats and push-ups and whatever, bench, tricep dips twice a week. They're not exercising enough for their health. And so my biggest fight right now is to get firefighters healthy. And once they're healthy, then we can start worrying about their performance. And so performance is intentional training to make you better at your job tasks. And so you're already meeting those minimum thresholds for your health. This type of training is going to make you better at forcing a door, pulling a hose, throwing a ladder. And when we talk about, I call them random acts of fitness. Can I say that? RAFs, random acts of fitness.
Love it.
When we talk about random acts of fitness, generally what firefighters are doing, even when they're getting the minimum required amount of training for their health, the training, we'll call it training with our finger quotes, the training they're doing above and beyond that is just simply random acts of fitness. So they're going to a CrossFit workout, no hate, just a modality. They're going to swim or marathon train or do bodybuilding to make themselves look better, thinking that this effort is going to transfer over to performance on the fireground. And although they may be increasing their VO2 max, they may be increasing their muscle mass, they're probably going to look better in the firefighter calendar. Their actual performance on the fireground might not be any better from doing these random acts of fitness. And so I like to make sure when I'm writing training programs for firefighters, we're actually doing things that are going to improve their performance. So, simple example, we want to be able to create a lot of force and finesse. We want to be able to create a lot of force when we are, say, striking a halligan to force a door. So, what types of movements other than striking a halligan to force the door might transfer over? Well, that might look like some weighted medicine ball, launching it towards a wall. So, rotational medicine ball throws. That's actually doing an activity that might translate to the job. And then, quite honestly, and I can maybe go on a tangent about this, um, just doing exercise in our gear, I don't think is a great idea, but doing actual job task training in our gear, I think that's where the magic happens. So, kind of to tie these ideas all together, minimum physical activity for our health, then physical training activities that actually will improve our performance, such as my example I gave, launching the medicine ball rotationally at the wall, then adding our fire gear and then doing actual job tasks. So dragging the dummy, throwing the ladder, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That progression, I believe, will really translate to performance on the fire ground.
Yeah, I've never heard it really explained that way, where it's like a progression, like you say. It's like basic health and wellness, fitness level, and then go up as a firefighter, and then go up again into gear, into real functional uses of equipment. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. That's a nice way to kind of build on that basic health and wellness, right?
Well, and I try to be very honest. I can't point you to a paper that says, nope, you should not do burpees in your firefighting gear with your SCBA and your helmet on. Nope, it's a bad idea. But I can point you to a lot of papers where your gear impacts your gait. It impacts your kinematics at your knee and your hip joint. The helmet impacts your center of gravity. The SCBA impacts your center of gravity. It impedes your range of motion. So I can point you to all kinds of pieces that say, maybe it's not such a great idea. So I'm going to be very honest. There's nothing that says terrible idea. There's not one paper, but there's also not a paper that says it's a really good idea. And so right now I think we have to use our common sense. And our common sense can be almost an analogy. I always get analogy and metaphor messed up. I think this is an analogy. When you are a collegiate football strength and conditioning coach, you do not have your team members go put on their pads and their helmet and their cleats to come into the weight room, because doing the bench press may transfer to pushing a player, but having their PPE, if that's what you want to call it, on, it doesn't translate. And I don't believe, again, there's not the research out there yet, but I don't believe it translates in fire either.
Yeah, when you first said that, I thought it was mainly around the carcinogen side of things, like the off-gassing or dirty gear and anything, but it's
Mhm.
more around the function of your body movement, from what you
Yeah,
said.
and I think that it's definitely worth consideration, the carcinogens, definitely. But, then I get the pushback like, "Well, there's this new brand of gear that's, like, PFAS free," and that's great, but also that doesn't solve the problem, the biomechanics. And I started looking into this, like, where did this idea come from? Because I think it's relatively new, this whole idea of putting on your PPE, that's too many Ps, PPE ensemble and doing some sort of a WOD. I think this is relatively new. And what I can come up with was a paper, Lesniak and Abel, I believe 2020, something like that. And the conclusion of the paper was, well, let's not get to the conclusion. Let's get to the just putting on your gear decreases your aerobic capacity. Just putting on your gear increases your heart rate. Just putting on your gear decreases your ability to move well. And so the suggestion, the paper was, so you should put on your gear more often to do job task training. But I think because, again, we were missing that translational piece, how do we translate the research to the actual fire service? The assumption was if job task training is good, riding an assault bike in my SCBA and my helmet and my PPE is better. And so I think it was just a mismatch of the science, what the scientists meant and what was heard on the fire services part.
With those four, kind of going back to our original conversation of, how do we communicate this with the firefighters and kind of put the pieces together? Have you found through your company and coaching that people gravitate more to the fitness side of wellness, or do they gravitate more to the mental health side, or where do you see most people like really resonating with your message?
Yeah. So this is actually it's a problem with my business. I used to be called Fire Rescue Fitness, and it was spelled FIRESQ Fitness. So first problem, nobody could read it. They're like, first Q Fitness, what does that mean? So when you have to explain the joke a million times, then it's time to change the name of your business. But I
I've seen
also
that.
sat down. Yeah. I also sat down one day. It looked really cool in a logo, though, let me tell you. I sat down one day and I'm like, I am not just fitness. I am so much more than fitness. And so that's when I rebranded to Fire Rescue Wellness. And I'm the sleep lady. I am the training lady. I am the mental health is important lady. I am the nutrition is important lady. Although I'm not a dietitian, I'm a sports nutritionist. So I outsource a lot of my dietitian stuff to Megan. But in becoming more comprehensive in my business, I became less clear to people what I do. And so I am steadfastly saying it's all important. I believe in it all and still having trouble getting that message across. And so I think if I had to streamline my message, I'm definitely the sleep lady, and I'm definitely the creatine lady, and I'm definitely the physical fitness lady. And that's still too much.
Saying too much, what would you add to your repertoire that you haven't yet?
What would I add? Oh,
Like, what's another
um,
passion that you want to make sure the fire service hears?
well, I mean, I said it. I said the C word, the creatine word. I have been preaching about it for years, and finally people are listening. It's fabulous. But what I have learned is that I say this all the time too, because I also work with coaches who are civilians who are trying to break into the business. I say to them all the time, you cannot bully people who willingly walk into a 1,000-degree oven. You can't bully them. And so all you can do is meet them where they are, educate them, and give them some sense of why they might want to care about what you're saying. And so that's what I'm doing with creatine. And so, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
I want to dive into creatine for sure. I
Yeah.
want to talk about what it is for one. I take it personally, but I want to tell the listeners, and then also the power of it.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to tell you what it's not. It is not a steroid. Okay.
Mm.
There was a misconception. 1990s moms thought that it was a steroid, and I guess that kind of stuck. And so it is not a steroid. It is 3 amino acids that you actually make creatine in your body. You synthesize creatine every single day. The problem is you kind of operate in a deficit. If I remember correctly, you make about 1-ish grams per day and you use about 2-ish grams per day. Well, the good news is you can also get it in your diet. And so things like fish and meat and milk, where it's not, though, really important to know, it is not in fruits and vegetables. And so people who are vegetarian or vegan take in very little, like, no, they need no creatine in their diet unless they supplement. So it's not a steroid. You make it in your very own body and you can get some of it in your diet. But ideally, you'd be getting about 3 to 5 grams a day from your diet. That would be optimal. And my friend Scott Forbes, fellow Canadian, by the way, my friend Scott Forbes did this really great chart about how much food you'd have to eat to get 5 grams creatine. I'm going to have you guess. We'll go milk. Do I say milk funny? I think I do. Uh, how many cups? How many cups of milk would you have to drink
Oof.
to get 5 grams of creatine?
Well, I don't drink milk for one, so that would be a stretch for me, but I'm gonna say, 4 or 5.
200.
200?
200. Now, we're
Yeah.
firefighters and we know
Uh,
someone will try it.
yeah.
Give me a loaf of white bread and 200 cups of milk, but 200 cups. Um, and so like codfish is another pretty good source of it. You want to guess how much cod you'd have to eat?
Well, if it's anything like milk, I'm gonna say a couple of fish for sure.
5 pounds of cod. So
Yeah. Yep. A lot of fish and
yeah,
chips. Yep.
a lot of fish and chips and milk. So okay, so to review, it's not a steroid. You make it in your own body and you can get it from your diet, but it'd be real difficult to get sufficient amount from your diet. And so supplementation of creatine is a great idea. Hear me out, because it's safe and it's effective. And it is the most researched supplement out there. So there all of the myths and misconceptions that you might have heard causes hair loss. Well, it's not a steroid, I already said that several times. Kidney failure, all of the myths and misconceptions that you've heard have been debunked. So it is really interesting, even in the studies where people said, like the double blind placebo studies where people said, oh, it upsets my stomach and makes me bloated. Noted. But guess what? The people that reported that were the ones that were on the placebo. So even the people that reported side effects, it was placebo. So for the most part, safe, effective, cheap. It got a lot less cheap during COVID, but it's inexpensive. So what are the benefits? Bigger, stronger muscles. That's a win. Um, Newly emerging benefits. Well, let's go back to the old benefits. Bigger, stronger muscles, power production, and strength production. Those are the main original benefits of creatine. And putting on fat-free mass. So increasing your muscle mass. Win. That's all a win. Even if those were the only benefits, winning. Emerging benefits. Benefits to your bone geometry. So not your mineral content, but actual geometry, which matters more when we're looking at bone density. In sleep deprivation, acute higher doses of creatine help with cognitive functioning. Who knew? Especially in females, decrease symptoms of anxiety and depression. Let's see. Traumatic brain injuries, which firefighters get a lot of them. In traumatic brain injuries, pre-brain injury, it can actually protect your brain. And then post-injury, it can help with healing, because concussions mostly are an energy problem in the brain. And creatine is an energy source. What else? I feel like I hit the wave tops, except one more really interesting one. The research was done in football players, and it was an observational study, not an interventional study, meaning not me, but the researcher didn't give the creatine to the football players. They simply later asked, are you taking it, yes or no? And what they found on their are you taking it, yes or no observational study, the football players that were taking it had lower heart rate, lower sweat rate, and lower core temperature. Wouldn't that be interesting benefits for firefighters? The research hasn't been done, but guess what? It's coming.
What rate? I've never heard of that before. What
Sweat.
would that
Sweat.
matter? Yeah, would that I
Well,
obviously, like, people don't wanna sweat as much as they but is there a health component to that, or
when you think about being fully encapsulated in gear,
Mhm.
sweating, because you're not able to cool yourself, there's really not a huge benefit to it. But if it was just the sweat rate, then it would be like, whatever. But they also have a lower heart rate and a lower core temperature. And so, um, regarding the core temperature, I can't tell you about this study because it's not my study and that hasn't been published. But I can tell you about the study that's coming, which is from the previous study. We know that firefighters' core temperature becomes elevated when they're in firefighting scenarios. Duh. We also know that it maintains or it stays elevated for a period of time after the firefighting scenario. Also, duh, that's like, you could probably guess that. What we don't know is how long that core temperature remains elevated after you dress down and you start cooling yourself off. And so that's a piece of the study that I have coming up in January is my recruits will be they're going to be swallowing little capsules with core temperature monitors in them. And we are going to be able to start to elucidate how long does that core temperature remain elevated. So, but when you think about back to creatine, when you think about a substance that potentially might be able to buffer your tamper, let's say tamper your core temperature down, that could be a huge win because time to exhaustion would be increased. And then also when we look at physiologically, like you know that it's a problem when your child has a temperature of 102. You know that if they have a temperature of 104, that's an emergency room, like dire, that's a visit, right? Well, we routinely see firefighters with core temperatures of 102. And so if we can figure out how to keep that core temperature down and then also take it down faster once they're out of the firefighting scenario, that could actually have long-term health benefits for the firefighters.
Love that. And that's a
Pretty
new study
cool.
coming up in
It's
January.
it's my
Nice.
study. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Well, I'm working with an agency that has, and maybe you can tell me because I have never heard of any agency doing this before, and it is incredible. For their recruits, they have a 24-hour training scenario. They come down to the academy for an entire 24 hours, and they respond to multiple fires. They respond to MBCs and EMS calls, and I think they even have a plane crash or a train derailment. Like it is mass casualty after mass casualty. But usually something like that is companies rotate through, or it's an 8-hour training day, 24 hours of responding to these calls, just like a real firefighter. So, have you ever heard of anything like that before? I have not.
Ironically, not firefighters, but cadets. So like high school students.
Okay.
We have a cadet camp that they do something similar. I don't know if it's 24 hours, but it's a full day.
Okay.
And part of the process is they get woken up in the middle of the night for the big structure fire. That
Exactly.
yeah, that's part of it, but the rest of the day is rappelling, auto X, you name it, and it's just a
Yeah.
full day of that, as part of their kinda graduation from the cadet camp. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, maybe since your cadets are doing this, maybe it is happening in recruits across the country and I've just never heard of it. But the great thing is this is the closest we can possibly get to actually going and camping out at a station. Lord knows how long we'd have to camp out at a station in order to see the same firefighting crew go on 2 structure fires in a row or 2 whatever. And so we'll be collecting biomarkers. We'll have heart rate, we'll have core temperature, and also sweat rate on all these recruits.
Very cool.
Pretty
All right.
excited.
So jumping back to the creatine, is there anybody who shouldn't taking creatine in the fire service?
So anyone that doesn't want to, I'm not in the business of convincing you. Yep. So if you don't want to take it, you should not take it. The only um so one of the big myths and misconceptions was it will destroy your kidneys, it's hard on your kidneys, whatever. That is a myth, but still as part of the warning, if you have pre-existing kidney condition, you probably should not take it. Would you actually take it? Probably, because it isn't metabolized by the kidneys at all. But that would be the research has happened in the elderly, it's happened in children, it's happened in males, females, working out, not working out. There's benefits for every single age group. And so I would say, sort of as the black box warning on the fire service, if you don't want to take it, don't take it.
Would be a good amount to start with for somebody who's starting out. milligrams or whatever that looks like?
Such good questions. So typically, historically, I should say, a lot of the research was done on just 5 grams a day every day. So I should say the research was done on 5 grams. So I would say if you want to go on the historical, 5 grams a day, every day, doesn't matter if you work out or if you don't work out, just take it every day. What time in it doesn't matter. Get a routine so you make sure and take it every day. What should I take it with, Annette? Kinda doesn't matter, but if you're trying to optimize things with carbohydrates or with protein because of the receptor that takes it up into the cells. 5 grams a day, most people's muscles will be saturated in a month. Or a lot of the emerging research on benefits in bone health and anxiety, depression, things like that were done on a relative dosing, meaning weight-based dosing. So zero point 0.1 grams per kilogram of body weight. And so for me, that's 7 point something, 8 grams per day. I just rounded up to 10. And then you may want to think about during acute sleep deprivation, that research was done at 20 grams. And so you go into the firehouse tonight, you're up all night, it's just you're wrecked the next day. You may want to consider an acute dosage of 20 grams per that day. That said, I typically would not take that 20 grams all at the same time because that actually may give you a rumbly dumbly. So maybe split that in half. Some of the other myths and misconceptions, you shouldn't take it with caffeine. Probably doesn't really matter. Timing doesn't really matter. You do not need the special female creatine in the pink bottle. No, creatine monohydrate, the cheap stuff. And as with any supplement, looking at a supplement that's third party tested is important because then we know exactly what's in it and what's more importantly, what's not in it.
You said it could take up to 30 days to saturate your muscles. So it's not something that happens overnight. It would be something that kind of accumulates in your body and you'll start to feel
Yeah,
the effects 30 plus days down the road.
more or less. So the original, you may have heard about this in the 90s. They always talked about the loading dose where you took um, 20 grams a day or like 5 days in a row or 7 days in a row. And then you would be saturated after that 7 days. Well, listen, we're firefighters. You went on duty, you forgot your creatine at home, you missed a day. So if you just take that sort of moderate dosage every day and just know that your muscles will be saturated in about a month. Other thing to think about is that, and this is why I can't personally be in any creatine studies, it takes about 6 weeks for all of it to wash out of your system. Not all of it, because remember, you're making it and eating it in your diet, but to, I guess, get back down to that level before you supplemented. And so if you're going on vacation or whatever, you're not going to need to. It's very suspicious when you take baggies of white powder, even if you put creatine on it. TSA doesn't usually like that.
No, I don't think so. So skipping it for a week is not going to change your overall wellness, is what you're saying, basically.
No, I mean, if you've been taking it for, a few months or whatever, and you're going on the vacation, like I would say either get some tablets, capsules or tablets, or you can also fluid nutrition, I love fluid nutrition. They have it in those little sticks. It's almost like a drip drop. And so that's clearly marked what it is, and it does not look like suspicious white powder. Just saying.
Cool. Is there any other elements of fitness and wellness that maybe but the general populace of the fire service is not up to speed on? Is there anything that's really sticking out to you? Like creatine is something that obviously resonates with you. Is there anything else that's like, wow, they need to hear this today?
Yeah, we have to get we have to get rid of this all or nothing, black or white, on the wagon 100% or off the wagon 100%. We've got to get rid of that mentality because we're doing harm. Firefighters fall off the wagon, and sometimes that fall off looks like 3 days, sometimes it looks like 3 years. but they fall off the wagon and then they try to come back to the same level, right? January 1st is coming. So, right, we're going to lose 5 pounds a week and we're going to work out 14 times a week and we're going to drink no alcohol and we're going to cut our calories to 1,200 calories, all of it, right? Well, none of that is a good idea. And all of it, well, maybe the alcohol, but none of it is a great idea by itself. It's all so strict. And when you add it all together, it just becomes too much. And so you might be able to, I call it white knuckle it, might be able to white knuckle it for 2 weeks, if you're lucky, 2 weeks. And then you forget your workout or you forget your creatine or whatever. And then you say, F it, I'm not doing any of it. And you fall off the wagon. And then you wash, rinse, and repeat for the rest of your life. If you could find a level of like middle ground and then just stay there for the rest of your life, everyone would be better off. I promise you, everyone would be better off if we could just stop the black and white and all and nothing and on and off the wagon and just get in the middle ground. That's what I want them to know. But the problem is, what makes them good firefighters, those extreme personalities, also makes them all or nothing.
Because what makes me think about is it also impacts your mental health. So if you keep going up and down, there's shame in there, there's guilt in there, there's all these
Yes.
things that kind of are negative self-talk. You're like, oh, I'm off the wagon again. I'm eating bag of chips again. I'm whatever that is.
I'm a
You're
loser.
beating yourself up every time, right? So it's not just a physical health; it's also a mental health as well.
I would rather have a firefighter just commit to a 15-minute walk and XYZ amount of water per day for the rest of their life. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Then have them train for a marathon and then nothing. Oh, bodybuilding show and then nothing. Oh, triathlon. That's got to be it. And then nothing. I think they would be, like you said, mentally healthier and also physically healthier if they just found what works for them every single day and just do it.
There was a fellow coach, because you coach people as well in your environment. Going through that whole experience of coaching others, you get to learn a lot. And that's what I get to do is coach fellow fire chiefs across North America. What have you learned about yourself coaching the fire service?
Mm. I have learned, is this about myself? It kind of is about myself. I have learned that moderating my responses such that the curiosity, tell me more about that. Oh, okay. You have a strong opinion about that. I would love to hear more about your foundational beliefs with that. Gets me so much further than telling them what to do. Nope, that's stupid. Working out in your gear is stupid. Don't do it. Well, no, that doesn't work. And so getting curious about why are you working out in your gear? What are you hoping to obtain from working out in your gear has worked a lot better. So I guess, what did I learn about myself? I need to be a lot more
That's the power of coaching, right? That's the power of coaching is having them come to their own best conclusion, solution, by you just asking good questions and having them go,
Do
AZ's
you
not
use
telling me how to do this. She's
no,
guiding me in the right direction for me to make the best decision.
yeah, like
Yeah,
this. Do you use motivational interviewing in your coaching
for
practice?
sure. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
What's worked for you in the past?
Mm,
What hasn't worked for you? Tell me more about that. What are your barriers? That's the big thing. Like, what do you perceive as your barriers?
mm,
Well, I have a infant at home and I have X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. Okay, we can work with it.
mm.
But if I don't ask, I don't know.
Okay. I think coaching in the fire service is just starting to kind of, I wouldn't say mainstream even. It's people are just starting to understand maybe some of the benefits around it. For the listener today, what would you say is like they've heard of coaching, but that's like, oh, it's maybe for sports or executives, not necessary for me. What would you say to that person listening right now of the power of coaching?
Mm, there's always somebody out there that knows more than you do and has a better way of doing something than you do. why not tap into that? So I don't do it anymore, but for the longest time, I had other people write my programming for me. Can I do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? Not on your life. I don't want to do it. And it cost a couple $100 a month, but it was worth its weight in gold. And so look for the people that are doing it better than you're doing it, and then like get coaching. But here's the thing, can I give a disclaimer? I personally, this is AZ talking. This does not represent the views and viewpoints of anyone I might work with or the podcast. I'm not wild about people reaching out and saying, "Can I pick your brain?" Or "Can I let's figure out how we can collaborate." No. Um, I like to say, "I would really like to work with you. How do I pay you for your services?" And if they choose to say, "Oh my gosh, don't worry about it. It's a 15-minute phone call." I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I thank you so much. I really appreciate that." But hopefully they don't undervalue what their services are, and I pay them for their services. And so find someone who's doing what you're doing better than you do it, and then figure out how to pay them for coaching. And it doesn't have to be the rest of your life. It can be a few weeks. What do you do?
That's exactly is in coaching. It shouldn't be something that you're not, I don't want to say holding their hand, but with them, supporting them, walking by them for the rest of their career. Hopefully, your coaching puts them in the right direction where they have the tools, the resources to start directing their own life, right?
A bad coach is a gatekeeper, meaning
Sure.
w- I've actually had people say this to me before, like, well, if you make them think independently of how to do it themselves, they don't need to come back to you. Uh-huh, exactly. I don't want to hold your hand for the rest of your life. I want to hold someone else's hand.
That might not be a good business model for revenue, but that is not coaching is not about that. It's about supporting the human, right? So,
No, and you're going to get referrals from
for
all the happy people that you were able to kick out of the nest.
sure. So, switching gears as we kind of wrap up, your podcast. Tell us a little bit about your podcast, and you're over 200 episodes, I believe now.
Right? Can you believe
Congratulations.
it?
That's pretty amazing.
Thanks.
Share the listeners how they can find it and a little bit about what it is.
Okay. Well, the Fire Rescue Wellness podcast brings the research and the resources and the so what, now what to the end user. So there's nothing more annoying than, science. Somebody finds some science or does some science, and then you're like, what in the heck do I do with this? And so my guests are primarily scientists and coaches in the fire service business. And yeah, I have some amazing, amazing guests, the Fire Rescue on this podcast. I'd love to have you guys give a listen. And then also, can I give a pitch for 7-Minute Science? Okay. 7-Minute Science is a brainchild of my friend and collaborator, Dr. Drew Gonzalez. And he called me one day and he's like, he was super frustrated because the people reading the research are the other researchers. Like, yes, we're so honored you're reading our ISSN position stand on tactical athlete fueling. So honored. You know who we really need to read it? The fire service, the police officers, and the military. And so he said, how are we going to get this information to the end user? Do we need to write a book? And I said, no, we do not need to write a book. Give me 5 minutes. Let me think about this. And so we came to the conclusion that it's the 7-Minute Science is free, and we get the best brains in fire research, and they talk about their science. They get 7 minutes, not 1 second longer. They're supposed to have 4 slides. Sometimes they cheat. 4 slides and no itty bitty graphs. Like, absolutely not. I will reject it on the spot. And then they have to give the listeners the so what, now what. And so again, it's free to register. You can register on my website.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what a perfect, 7 minutes, very structured, kind of some
Yeah.
boundaries there of, you don't just start having a conversation and kind of go into other things. It's very pinpoint.
They
So,
know I will mute their butts. Also, if you're not quite sure that you might want to register for this free event, if you're not quite sure, there's old episodes of 7-Minute Science stored on the website. So you
beautiful.
can just watch a couple videos.
Awesome. So how can people find your website and connect with you?
very important. It is www.firerescuewellness.org. If you go .com, you're not going to get there. So .org. There is a contact me button on the website if you would like send me a little email. And I'm not as active on Instagram as I used to be, but you can also find me on Instagram and LinkedIn, Fire Rescue Wellness, or Annette Fire Rescue Wellness.
So as we wrap up, is there a question that you wish I asked you that I have not asked you yet?
No, because I'm very, very defiant. I just insert it right in there. Creatine, you want to talk about it? No, I think
It was
we
on my
hit all
list.
the good
It was on
stuff.
my list.
Um,
I'd love to dig into the hormones, but I think that's probably a whole nother episode for sure.
How about this? After the 24-hour data collection, where we are literally not drawing, it's not blood, it's saliva, where we're literally watching what those hormones do over the whole 24 hours. After we start to sort through all that data, if you want to chat about it again, we'll chat.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, sharing your wisdom. Yeah, it's definitely a wealth of knowledge you have to share with the fire service community. So thank you for being a part of it. And thank you for retiring from the fire service and pivoting to this new resource that we so desperately need. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you.
I appreciated being here. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a fabulous day.
Yes, you as well. All right, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed this great episode with Annette AZ. And check out her website and check out her resources that she has for you as well. So until next time, stay well. All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.